Thank you. Thank you all. As he said, I just made it. I went to the wrong hotel, but that's okay. Uh, but, we're going to be talking about something I think that is very, very important. Innovation versus regulation. That's always the hard balance in a transformative technology. Uh, Especially something that's so transformative like AI. It's revolutionizing medicine, it's revolutionizing education and all those things. But you also have challenges that come with it, which is safety, biases, hallucinations, and all those other things. So, how do we deal with that? I think is the big challenge for us. But lucky for you and lucky for me, we have some incredible panelists that the hosts have put together, and they've done a great job. So, with that, I'll do a quick introduction. We have a short time, and we are towards the end of the day. So, made this a pretty brisk panel for us. And so, um, I'll introduce the panelists, and if I'm short in the introduction, they can jump in themselves. Uh, we have Daniel Fenton, who uh, heads up strategy at AI for JLL, a global real estate firm. And then we have obviously Zorina Alliata. She's the principal AI strategist for Amazon. And we have Zachary Hanif, who's the head of AI machine learning at Twilio, prior at Capital One. Right. So I think we have a fantastic panelists. They bring fintech, they bring real estate, they bring policy background. So Daniel, why don't we just do a quick start with you? Nobody generally associates real estate and AI together. So tell our audience what is happening in the world of real estate with AI, and especially how do regulatory frameworks globally impact your global company?
Yes. So actually, one of the nice things about real estate is that it's not a heavily regulated industry, which means we were able to get the jump on AI and rolled out an enterprise AI strategy like right in 2023 and made sure that we got the equivalent of ChatGPT, but a safe enterprise version into our employees' hands immediately. And so just training people. And so the regulatory environment was actually pretty conducive to us being able to do that in real estate. We do tons of different documents and leases and things that are unstructured. There's lots of communication that's going on across the world in different languages. And so the top use cases of AI really like mapped itself up pretty well onto our business. Now, as we grow, we try to do things in a global way. Definitely keeps our attorneys busy, trying to figure out what we need to do to like handle us. Earlier saying don't go to jail, don't get sued. I mean, frankly, like don't get sued is a pretty big motivation. When we do it in Europe, and I think that there hasn't been enough like clarity on what the principles are, so we could follow those versus like just trying to keep ourselves out of trouble. And then data localization has been a pretty challenging issue for us. For example, in China, we need to use a different LLM or to keep all the personal and key data in China. And so that means that our Chinese colleagues basically have a worse version of the technology. And we see that in some other countries around the world. And that's basically what's happening. It kind of like makes it so that we can't have a single common like denominator for all our employees or clients or world. And that we have to kind of do special things for each individual country, make sure we serve them. So, it's a bit of a drag in our sales.
So basically, real estate is not being very heavily regulated, but data sovereignty is a big issue because most countries, whether in China, India, etc., are really focusing in on that. Uh, Zorina, the EU passed a comprehensive EU AI Act.
Okay.
So for our audience, can you obviously talk a little bit about the strengths and weaknesses, contrast it with what's happening in the United States, especially you have a new administration here, which has a very different, maybe you can tell our audience a little bit about that.
Sure. And I get this question because I worked in the US, but also in Europe. So I've been exposed to both sides. Every time in the US, I get questions about how the EU Act is weak. When I'm in Europe, they ask me how the EU Act is strong. So no matter what side of the ocean I'm at, The truth is, the fact is, it's one piece of regulation where a lot of experts contributed. They're just trying to make sense of a technology that will affect all of us, right? Is it perfect? Is it great? Maybe not, but it's a first step. There are some major differences between how Europeans look at AI versus how the current administration and companies are looking at it here in the U.S. In Europe, there's a lot of accent on rights, fundamental human rights, ethics, right? And they think of using AI as across industries. While in the U.S., things get very specific. There's some guidelines, but there are no laws, right, that you have to comply with. And then things get very specific per se. They're like, if you're a financial company, you have specific regulatory things you have to worry about. And then the subjects are like how we use AI for very specific things, such as election integrity or national security, right? So it's not the same approach as the EU. And I think the one thing that I hear the most as against the EU Act is that it might, be too drastic and might stifle innovation. And to that, all my European friends say, well, we have Stability AI, we have DeepL, we have Mistral, right? So it's not stifling any innovation. So some regulation it's all right. So it's a matter of, trying to find the best way. What would that be? I think we still have to find out.
So finding the best way. I mean, I've been in Europe several times in the last few months. I mean, one of the fears that the Europeans have is a lot of the startups are going to move here. But uh, Zorina, and we heard yesterday in the president spoke to join the session of Congress. We are not going to have a comprehensive uh, AI act here. The issue is there are states that are going to jump in. And this is really a question for all of you, and I'm going to come to you later. Uh, you'll have a regulation like California, Connecticut, Colorado. Companies like JLL, Amazon have deep pocketed lawyers who can deal with these kind of regulations, but we might have entrepreneurs here that are sitting here that have to now deal with the EU Act or we deal with the California EU Act. I just want to get some perspective from you because that's vacuum is going to be filled in some.
But that is correct. So there is a cost to regulation, any type of regulation. So U.S. companies that go right now to do business in Europe, they will incur the cost because they have to now comply. Same with any you could in different states, you will have to now comply with specific regulations. So that's a cost to you as a company, and that's the risk right there. Um, do I think that do we have the right answer? Not yet. California tried to pass the bill last year. Was it SB 1047, I believe? It was in the news. It was everywhere. The entire AI community was up in arms about it. About 80% was against it. Some were for it. And that was a good example of why we can't really say for sure how it should work. I think somebody said earlier, AI is not just a product. It's not like a utility. It's not a car that you can buy or not. This is something that will affect all of our lives, the entire society, our children's lives, right? So this is so important that we should maybe have a say in how it's done. There should be some type of hopefully foundation that we all agree on how to create these products, right? If there isn't anything, then are you getting a lot of fragmented products that will only serve specific audiences instead of all of us as it should be? And I'm sorry, I'm going to say one more thing. I've been to one conference where a lot of scientists had a really interesting idea, which was we should all participate in these decisions because it does affect all of us. We should all say, yes, let's build an AI product. Let's build an LLM that does a specific thing. Or no, let's not build it. It's not good for us. So just one idea out there.
Well, that's great. Zachary, you had experience in the financial services area, which is a very regulated industry per se, but it's also a great user of AI technology. Capital One considers itself a tech company really that provides financial services. How do you balance compliance regulation in such an industry with innovation, because you got to continue to innovate. I mean, when you look at the JP Morgan and others, the majority of hiring they're doing now is for machine learning programmers, etc. So I would argue against this balance in the higher up really industry.
That's a great question. And I've gotten that a lot over the years. And one of the things that I like to tell people when they're looking from the outside of a regulated industry into it and ask them that question, how are you still like to do the patient? The thing I tell is that you sit down and you read all of the AI related regulation for the financial industry, material that's coming out of the EU AI Act, the locally, the state level AI acts that we're starting to see more and more of. You will see that ultimately they all come down to two statements, and this is a massive reduction. But the two things they all ask for are: one, how do you know that your model is doing what you expect it to do? How do you know that your model is having the effect that you intended to have? That's statement one. And it's statement two. How do you communicate your model's effects to those it judges? So if you are in, for example, the fintech space, one of the major bodies of legislation, not legislation, or regulatory guidance, is OCC 2011-12, which provides guidance to financial institutions inside of the United States about how they should govern their models, which ultimately comes back down to how does the company know what its model is doing? And how is it capable of reassuring the corporate stakeholders, in this case, regulators representing the federal government, right, that the customers of that financial institution are being correctly managed? That is the wild reduction of this. And if you read the EU AI Act and the state level acts, they all more or less go in that direction. The only things that the EU AI Act and some of the stronger pieces of legislation actually come out and directly forbear, right, are certain types of operations in areas that are obviously and clearly high risk. For example, if anyone in this room has ever programmed in Java or has a company where you have programs in Java, one of the first things everyone does when you install Java is you assign a end user license agreement. And one of the terms of that end user license agreement is you shall not use Java to run a nuclear facility. That is not a joke. That is actually something that is in there. And why is that there? Because Java is a garbage collected language, right? And during a garbage collection, you can have a stall. And if you have a stall inside of something like a nuclear facility, that can lead to terrible outcomes. And so the statement that I would make is the grand scope of things that are actually prohibited by regulation is about, say this wide. It's not really all that much. What regulation does is it creates a body of guidelines, a body of guardrails that people who are doing this innovation must adhere to, right? Which can at times prevent you from experimenting with the brand new thing immediately, right? But my statement is it's actually not as restrictive as it can often feel from the outside looking in. Once you're on the inside, the things that you are actually prohibited from doing are about this large. Everything else is make sure you're being responsible with the technology. Make sure you know what the model is doing, know how it's affecting your consumers and customers, and so on and so forth. The standard things that really any business cares about. I don't think there's a single business owner in this room who would raise their hand and say, yeah, I'm perfectly comfortable with a machine making business decisions on my behalf, affecting my customers, that I have no introspection into it. It's really no different.
So very little to worry about regulation. It's really about the explainability is what you're saying for financial services or any other regulated.
Explainability, monitoring, all that good stuff. That's not what I'm saying. There's hard things that are prohibited by regulation. But I would say that it's not as limiting as you would expect. And most business owners actually have the same level of guardrails inside of their businesses today. This is just, it looks different because it's coming from a federal regulator.
We have a very tight session, and I want to make sure I'm not the one who's getting pearls of wisdom from them. We'll open it up to the audience, and if they don't ask questions, I've got about 36 more questions for you. But we only have 2 minutes and 50 seconds, so speak now or for all your please. Please introduce yourself.
Yes, so I'm Deepika. I worked at TNS. It is a telecom company. So Zachary, this question is for you. You were in the financial world. My background is also for financial world, but I came into the telecom, domain. Help me, or explain to me the difference that you see in terms of what we are talking about innovation and regulation in the domain that you were for. One is financial and the other is telecom.
Okay, so I will answer this question in the full knowledge that I'm sitting in Washington, D.C., and there's almost certainly a regulator within, like, a regulator who knows me personally that maybe a mile or two of where I'm currently sitting. So I say this with full knowledge. They are very different regulatory environments. But the thing that is absolutely the case, especially for America, and my answer is going to be very much targeted for American regulators because that's where I have the vast, almost the sum totality of my experience. American regulators are concerned fundamentally with the protection of what is considered to be nationally critical infrastructure. Finance is nationally critical infrastructure. Telecom is nationally critical infrastructure. If you don't think that's the case, try walking away from those services for a little while. Let me know how that goes. And then two, they are concerned about the behavior and the well-being of the American consumer, right? Both from the obvious financial impacts in the case of bank depositors, right? And then also from the perspective of for the FCC specifically and in telecoms, individuals who receive phone messaging, right? Both have a mandate, both types of regulation have a mandate to protect those two entities amongst the other sundry responsibilities. They are very different environments because those organizations pursue their mandates in different ways. I would argue that finance tends to be highly proactive. They are looking forward to the future. And I would argue that for the FCC, they are, and telecom industry in general, are very concerned with the behavioral aspects of what's going on. One is more operationally risk-oriented and the other one is more predictively risk-oriented at certain points. I'm aware that this is anyone who's involved with these regulators know that I'm running roughshod as a summary here. But I would say that they definitely have very different temporal aspects, but they are concerned with the same thing at the end of the day. Does that answer your question?
It does. And it resonates with what even my experience has been in both the industries.
Yeah, if you see me getting tackled coming out of here by someone who's looks like the kind of person who has ham radio license, you will know I have fulfilled my current regulators. Hand them back. I'm sorry, how about the moderator?
My name is Omar and I'm with Data Access Point. My question now has to do with the thinking digital and going digital, right? So now for whatever, fintech, your customers are age 5. I don't know. Why age 5? Because kids use their parents' credit cards to get all my gains. And so they're using the credit card. And so there are companies that are tweaking their customer for a younger group, and then they're trying to graduate them to an adult, right? So there's a way to save money as a kid and eventually as an adult. Now, we're supposed to keep track of all this as a company, right? So you expect the company to be around for a while. And so how do you keep track of these changes in their lifestyle? Of course, they could be becoming, adults, and they get a job, and they get married, and they have kids. So how do you keep them as customers throughout the whole process?
I assume the question that you're asking is oriented towards how do you observe and tailor your services to best serve a customer across their overall lifetime journey, and not what are Zachary's strategies to best extract wealth from 13-year-olds who have soul liver. Is that the
That's so because as a fintech, you wanna help the younger generation, right? So one of the days where you want to alpha the people because all people wrote checks and stuff, but it's everything now with all of you. So how do you keep track of this going forward? Because again, you have to keep their name, you have to know their name, their age, their address, right? So how do you hide all this but keep moving forward to the customer life cycle in your company?
Yeah, customer lifecycle tracking is definitely a both. It is a interesting space to be in right now because it is both something that is necessary for the modern corporation to be able to do, right, for their customers, right. The customer that I was to American Express
when I was 21 is distinct from the customer that I am now at the ripe old age of 23. So like that there's massive differences here over time. Keeping track of that requires multiple steps. One, I would say there's a lot of diligence from the data perspective. And I would be interested in the opinions of both Daniel and Zorina as well. But my advice to someone asking that question in the highest level is that is a data question, not an AI question. AI has not changed that perspective there. It is fundamentally the underlying, what is your data governance strategy? How do you manage personally identifying information? And how do you protect that material? If you're asking how to build a model that can model over the overall perspective, once you have that data, you can train your model over whatever time window you necessarily want to the whatever the vagaries are of the amount of information you could supply to it. But the question that you've asked fundamentally is a data question and not an AI question. I've been sober.
Agree to that.
It is an AI question.
Any questions for Zorina and Daniel?
I think we're five.
Well, that makes it real quick.
As we are at high. But I don't want Zorina and Daniel to feel left out from this Q&A here.
All right, I will be quick. I am Aki, and I am leading the privacy of Alexa. And here I was leading the privacy of Meta's Sopo. Today, we are researching innovation versus devolution. After 2 years, do you think we will be discussing innovation and devolution? We should not be opposing. What is on day?
I mean, sure, that would be great that they are. I mean, it's constraints that you have to alleviate. Can build global solutions. You have to deal with the complexities for different regions, and so within a given region, like if you're just the U.S., it's pretty much there's no additional AI regulations that are slowing you out. But as soon as you get to Europe, or you get to China, which it's a huge economy, it does slow you down. So I don't see that changing. But it's slowing you down for what purpose? That's what matters. And so regulations that make sense, that really protect the consumer, protect your national security programs. Like those make sense. That's worth it. But you don't want to see repeat things like what GDPR has done to browsing web. Right? I feel like we don't want to see cookie banners for every AI interaction. I think that's not the way to go. And so I think that's what we need to keep in mind.
Right. So I think like I said earlier, it's finding that balance, right? Like what happened in California. How do you find the balance? Can we all agree? Can I all agree on some fundamental things that should be there versus something that, it's up to each region or whatever. So, and I don't think we're there yet. I think there's efforts. But now that, with this administration, I don't think we get any more regulation in the U.S. for a while at least. So, yeah. Who knows when we get to that nice ideal space? Would it all be?
So thank you, Sanjay, Daniel, Zorina, and Zachary.